All right, so we want to start understand. So this is a rudimentary attempt, or first attempt, it's rudimentary, at what we'll call these word shift graphs, and in this case it's a happiness one, but I think in general it's going to be a categorical data shift. So here's the idea. We're going to take all of the songs after 1980 and compare them to all the songs before 1980, because they're roughly, you know, the drop sort of goes down towards about 1980 and then stays. I'm going to add a lot more texture to these things as we go along. What we want to see is why is the music or the lyric, why are the lyrics after 1980 less happy, right? So all these words that we're scoring have fluctuated in usage, frequency, right? There's a spectrum of usage for before 1980 and a spectrum of usage for after, right? Zip distributions, if you like. So they contribute, and I'll have the simple calculation that we do. So there are 4 ways things can change. So let me just try to explain this in a big way. So we're going to say, let's take the average happiness of all the lyrics before 1980, and then we look for words that are happier than that average or less happy than that average, right? So we have to have a reference text. So it's not a symmetric thing. So we have a reference text, and then we look at words that are happier individually or less happy than that reference. And so the happier ones, they could be being used more, and that's here, right? So these words are being used more after 1980. These are happier words than the pre-1980 stuff, and as a whole, and they're being used more. So these things are being used more. That would tend to push post-1980 up, right? There are, so that would help them. There are negative words that are being used more, though, after 1980. So these are relatively negative ones. These are being used more, and so that hurts after 1980, right? So that pushes things down. And so all of those are, so they're going to be organized in different ways. But so these more negative, positive ones, so these ones, these more negative ones being used more are here, right? Hate, pain, death, dead, sick, fear, hit. So collectively, they're adding up to make after 1980 more negative. And they're in order, right? So these little bars show you the percentage of their contribution to the difference in the average. Again, I'll get to some calculations. It's a bit of a weird thing, so these things are on this side. And I'll change the way this labeling works. So, and this means they're being used more. So blue is negative, being used more. There are blue words that are being used less after 1980, so there's less sad and less trouble, less loneliness, and in particular much less lonely, right? So lonely is a negative word. People just don't use that word after the 1980 relatively. So, you know, all of these words written on this side are helping after 1980, and these ones are hurting it, right? And these ones collectively add up to really push it down. But it's nuanced, right? There are some good things. And so we'll see that about things like Saturdays versus Tuesdays, or young people versus old people, right? It's not just that, you know, one team is happier than the other and it's all beer and Skittles for them. It's like there are some bad things for them as well. Okay, so this is good. So it's a nuanced thing. It's taking 2 scores and then sort of blowing out this whole thing. And of course this keeps going. This in principle goes for our whole 1,034 words. Yeah, so, right, these things are, this side is hurting after 1980, right? Less of these positive ones, more of these negative ones. So these are a little bit more nuanced, these 2 pieces. There are less of these negative ones, less of these positive ones. And that's, you know, that's not as strong as having like more of these happy words, which sort of just pushes you up, right? There are, you can also just have less of some negativity. Can dampen things out. All right. So these graphs are a little bit funny, but I want to point out there are just these 4 things that can happen, right? The words could be happier or less happy. They can be used more or less. So you get 4 possible ways that things can contribute. So let's just try to write this out. So we're going to have the happiness of text 2 minus the happiness of text 1. Let's see if we can calculate that. And we'll break the difference down in this way. Maybe I should write that out for you. Right, I guess I could. Yeah. I'll do some notes as well. So this is going to be the thing we're going to rank everything by. It's a percentage difference. So we've got the difference in happiness between two things. You can rearrange things so we get this expression. This is going to be this is the big deal here. This is the probability that a word is, the word I is, its relative abundance, right? So it's the probability of its usage minus probability of usage in time 1, time 2. I'm sorry, text 2, text 1. And then this is the happiness of word I minus the average of the whole of text 1. So these two pieces is where you get your two possibilities, right? So a word could be above this happiness or below. That makes a plus or minus here. It could be used more or less frequently, and that'll give you a plus or minus here. So those two things, right? So it could be plus plus, it's a happier word used more, minus minus, which would be a negative word used less. Both of those things help the second text. Or they could be swapped, right? So it could be plus minus, which means it's a happier word being used less, pushes it down, or a negative word being used more, which is a more straightforward thing, right? There's more negative stuff being used more, that's pushing it down. That's the more kind of clear thing. And I will give them different colors as we go on. This is a normalization, right? So this is the difference in the average happiness. This is a normalization. And then we multiply 100 to get a percentage. So if you sum up all of this over word I, then we'll get, what I'll do is I'll come back and do this in a separate thing. We're going to sum over all of the words, and all of this balances out, you'll get 100, right? You'll get the percent, which will be the total percentage change between the two texts. So this is a simple thing. So we can go and measure all these pieces, right? We measure the average happiness or whatever it is. It could be any score you have here for the text. And then we look at this difference, we look at this difference, we compute all these pieces, we get these averages, and we're going to rank them by their overall, how much they contribute. Whether it could be a positive contribution or a negative contribution.